Daniel Cross stood at the window of his office and watched the sun rise over New Haven Colony. The golden light touched the green fields where crops grew in neat rows. 12 years ago, this planet had been empty. Now it was home to 8,000 people who had built a new life far from Earth. He smiled as he saw children walking to school with their parents. The market in the central square was already busy. Farmers brought fresh vegetables while bakers carried warm bread. The smell of coffee drifted from the cafes. This was what humanity could build when given a chance. Peace, progress, hope. His office door opened, and Sophie walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. She was the chief medical officer and had been with the colony since the beginning. Her brown hair was tied back, and she looked tired from a long night at the hospital. "You're here early," she said, handing him a cup. "Couldn't sleep," Daniel replied. "They sent another message. They want to meet." Sophie sat down in the chair across from his desk. "What do they want this time?" "They didn't say, just requested a diplomatic meeting." Daniel took a sip of his coffee. "They've been very interested in our sector lately." "Doesn't trust them," Sophie said. Hayes was the head of security for the colony. His small team of 40 people kept the peace and handled any problems that came up. "Doesn't trust anyone," Daniel said with a slight laugh. "That's why he's good at his job." "Maybe you should listen to him this time." Sophie's voice was serious now. "I treated a trader last week. He had a broken arm from a loading accident. While I was working on him, he said something strange." "What did he say?" "He said the galaxy needed cleansing, that inferior species would be removed." Sophie looked at Daniel. "When I asked what he meant, he just smiled and left as soon as I finished the treatment." Daniel frowned. They were a reptilian species known for their strong military. They had expanded their territory several times in the past 50 years, but they had never threatened human space before. "I'll mention it in my report to Earth," Daniel said. "But we can't assume the worst based on one person's words. We need to maintain good relations with all our neighbors." Park rushed into the office without knocking. He was the communications officer and he looked worried. His hands were shaking as he held a data pad. "Sir, we have a problem," said. "Long-range sensors just detected multiple ships entering orbit." Daniel stood up quickly. "What kind of ships?" "Warships, 20 of them. They didn't ask for permission to enter our space. They just came." Sophie's cup fell from her hand and shattered on the floor. Coffee spread across the tiles, but nobody moved to clean it. "Get here now," Daniel ordered, "and open a channel to those ships." Nodded and ran out of the office. Daniel turned to Sophie. "Go to the hospital and make sure your staff is ready. This might be nothing, but we need to be prepared." Sophie left without another word. Daniel walked to his desk and pulled up the colony's defense protocols on his screen. They had never needed them before. New Haven was a farming colony, not a military base. Their weapons were meant for hunting animals, not fighting warships. Arrived within 5 minutes. He was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He had served in Earth's military before retiring to the colony. Now he looked like a soldier again. "I saw the ships," said. "We need to evacuate the civilians." "We don't know if there's a threat yet," Daniel replied. 20 warships don't show up by accident." Moved to the window and pointed at the sky. "Look." Daniel looked up and saw them, dark shapes against the blue sky. They were descending slowly toward the colony. Their hulls were covered in weapons. "Get your people ready," Daniel said quietly. "But don't start anything, we'll try to talk first." Stared at him for a long moment. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe, but I have to try." His voice came through the speakers in the office. "Sir, I have a connection to the lead ship. They're responding." "Put them through," Daniel said. The screen on his wall lit up. A commander appeared. His scales were dark red and his eyes were yellow. When he smiled, Daniel could see rows of sharp teeth. "I am commander of the Sovereignty," the alien said. His voice was rough like stones grinding together. "This planet now belongs to our empire. You have 1 hour to surrender." "This is our home," Daniel said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We have legal claim to this world under galactic law. We've lived here peacefully for 12 years. "Your claims mean nothing," replied. "Your species is weak. You do not deserve to hold valuable worlds. We will take what should be ours." "Please," Daniel said. "There are children here, families. We can negotiate." "There is nothing to negotiate," leaned closer to the camera. "Surrender or be removed." The screen went dark. Was already moving toward the door. I'm ordering an evacuation. We need to get people to the shelters. Do it, Daniel said. His hands were shaking now, but keep your weapons ready. Ran out of the office. Daniel could hear alarms starting to sound across the colony. People would be confused and scared. Many had never experienced anything like this. He opened a channel to Earth, but new help wouldn't arrive in time. New Haven was on the frontier. It would take weeks for any military ships to reach them. They were alone. Daniel walked back to the window. He could see people running in the streets below. Parents grabbed their children and headed for the shelters. His people, his responsibility. The ships were lower now. He could see their weapons charging. The air around them shimmered with energy. Maya Johnson's voice came through his communicator. She was the lead agricultural scientist. Daniel, what's happening? My workers are panicking. Get everyone to the shelters, Daniel said. Do it now. But the crops, all our work. Leave it, just go. He closed the channel and took a deep breath. Through the window, he saw the first drop ships launching from the warships above. They were coming down fast like meteors. His voice crackled through the speakers. All security personnel to defensive positions. This is not a drill. Daniel grabbed his jacket and ran toward the door. He didn't know what he could do against 20 warships, but he couldn't just stand there and watch. As he reached the hallway, the first explosion shook the building. The lights flickered. Somewhere in the distance, someone screamed. They had opened fire. The ground shook as energy weapons struck the administration building. Daniel fell against the wall and felt pain shoot through his shoulder. Dust filled the air and made it hard to breathe. He pushed himself up and kept moving toward the stairs. Outside, the sky was full of ships. They fired at buildings while soldiers in armored suits dropped from the transport vessels. Daniel could hear weapons fire and screaming. His communicator was filled with voices all talking at once. We're taking heavy fire at the East Gate, requesting backup. Medical center under attack. I repeat, medical center under attack. Shelter 3 has been hit. We have casualties. Daniel reached the ground floor and ran outside. The street was chaos. People ran in every direction while explosions sent debris flying through the air. A woman fell near him and he stopped to help her up. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead. Get to a shelter, he told her. She nodded and limped away. Daniel kept running toward the security station where had set up the defense. Jake was in the street ahead trying to gather children. He was a teacher at the elementary school, and Daniel could see fear in his eyes. A group of kids huddled around him, crying and holding onto each other. Jake, get them underground, Daniel shouted. The school is on fire, Jake yelled back. I got most of them out, but some are still inside. Daniel grabbed his arm. You can't go back in there. I have to, they're just kids. Before Daniel could stop him, Jake ran back toward the burning building. Daniel wanted to follow, but more explosions forced him to take cover behind a wall. When he looked again, the school's roof collapsed in a shower of flames and broken stone. Jake didn't come back out. Daniel felt something break inside him, but he couldn't stop. He had to keep moving. He reached the security station and found Amy organizing what was left of their team. They had taken positions behind barriers and were firing at soldiers advancing down the main street. How many people did you lose? Daniel asked. Half my team is dead, said without looking away from his weapon. The rest are spread across the colony trying to protect civilians. We're not soldiers, Daniel. We're security guards with hunting rifles. Amy fired 3 shots and a soldier fell, but 10 more took his place. Their armor absorbed most of the human weapons' fire. They moved forward slowly and methodically like they had all the time in the world. We need to fall back to the central shelters, Amy said. We can't hold this position. If we fall back, they'll have clear access to the residential sector, replied. Thousands of people are still trying to evacuate. If we stay here, we die and they get through anyway. Knew she was right. He grabbed his communicator. All units fall back to shelter positions. Fighting retreat. Keep them busy as long as you can. The security team began pulling back, firing as they moved. Daniel stayed with them because there was nowhere else to go. He picked up a rifle from a fallen guard and tried to help, but his hands were shaking so badly he could barely aim. They reached the medical center and found Sophie standing in the entrance. Her white coat was covered in blood. Behind her, Daniel could see beds filled with wounded people. The staff moved between them trying to save lives with limited supplies. "You need to evacuate," Daniel told her. "I can't move these patients," Sophie said. "Most of them will die if we try." "They'll die if you stay." Sophie looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Then we die helping them. That's what doctors do." Before Daniel could argue, a gunship flew over the building. It turned in the air and its weapons locked onto the medical center. Saw it and shouted a warning, but it was too late. The missiles hit with terrible force. The entire front of the building exploded inward. The blast threw Daniel backwards into the street. His ears rang and he couldn't hear anything except a high-pitched sound. He rolled over and tried to focus his eyes. The medical center was gone, just rubble and fire where it had stood seconds before. Sophie was gone. Her patients were gone, all of them dead in an instant. Daniel wanted to scream, but no sound came out, pulled him to his feet and dragged him away as more soldiers appeared. They were shooting everyone they saw, not just armed people, everyone. In the farming district, Maya watched from a storage building as soldiers moved through the fields. She had been checking crop yields when the attack began. Now she hid with 6 other workers while the enemy destroyed everything they had built. A farmer named George tried to run for his truck. They shot him in the back. He fell face down in the dirt he had worked for years. They didn't even check if he was dead. They just kept walking. Maya held her hand over her mouth to keep from crying out. The others with her were doing the same. They watched as the soldiers set fire to the crops, 12 years of work burning in minutes. Park was still in the communications building trying to send a distress signal. He had locked himself in the main control room and was using every frequency he could access. Earth needed to know what was happening. "This is New Haven Colony. We are under attack by forces. Repeat, we are under attack. 8,000 civilians. Please send help." He sent the message again and again. The building shook as weapons fire hit it. He could hear soldiers breaking through the doors below. They were coming for him. Set the message to automatically broadcast and lock the controls. Even if they killed him, the signal would keep going out. He pulled a pistol from his desk and pointed it at the door. They broke through a minute later, fired until his weapon was empty. He hit 2 of them before they shot him. As he fell, he hoped his message had reached someone. Daniel and Amy reached the central shelter with about 300 people. It was an underground bunker designed to protect against storms. Now it was their last refuge. They sealed the heavy doors and tried to count how many had survived. "Where are the others?" a woman asked. "My husband was at the market." Daniel couldn't answer her. He didn't know who was alive and who was dead. The communicator networks were down. The medical center was destroyed. The school was gone. The administration building was in ruins. Was talking to his remaining security people. "We have enough supplies for maybe 3 days. After that, we'll have to go out." "Go out to what?" Amy asked quietly. "There's nothing left." Above ground, they continued their attack. They systematically destroyed every building in the colony. When they found people hiding, they either killed them or took them prisoner. Commander watched from his ship and was satisfied. "How many humans have been eliminated?" he asked his second in command. "Approximately 7,400, the officer replied. "We have captured 600 survivors, mostly females and young ones. They will be useful as slaves." "Excellent. Broadcast our victory across the sector. Let all species know the price of weakness." In the shelter, Daniel sat against the wall with his head in his hands. Around him, people cried and held each other. Children asked for parents who weren't coming back. The lights flickered as power systems struggled to stay online. Maya had made it to the shelter along with 20 other farmers. She sat next to Daniel. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Maya broke the silence. "Got the message out. I saw him transmitting before the building was hit." "Earth is weeks away," Daniel said. "By then it won't matter." "It will matter," said from across the room. His face was hard and his voice was cold. "Earth needs to know what happened here. They need to know what these creatures did." Daniel looked up at him. "Why? So they can come and find our graves?" No, stared at the sealed door like he could see through it to the destruction above. "So they can make the pay." Outside, Commander recorded his victory message. Behind him, New Haven Colony burned. The smoke rose into the sky and blocked out the sun. Distress signal traveled through space for 6 days before reaching Earth. It arrived at the Mars relay station first, where a young technician named David picked it up during his night shift. He listened to the message once, then immediately forwarded it to Earth Command with priority coding. Admiral Richard Cole was in a meeting when his communicator started flashing red. He had served in the United Earth Defense Fleet for 30 years and had never seen that alert code before. It meant only one thing: civilians under attack. He opened the message and listened to his voice growing more desperate with each repetition. In the background, Richard could hear explosions and screaming. The message cut off suddenly, then started over again automatically. Richard stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "Get me President now." Within an hour, President Victoria had assembled the United Earth Council in the emergency chamber. The room was full of representatives from every nation and colony. They all watched in silence as the footage from New Haven played on the screens. The images were from security cameras that had kept recording until they were destroyed. They showed soldiers shooting fleeing civilians. They showed the medical center exploding. They showed children burning in the school. They showed it all. When the footage ended, nobody spoke. Victoria looked around the room at faces filled with shock and rage. She had been president for 8 years and had always worked for peace. But this was different. "How many survived?" she asked quietly. Richard stepped forward. "Best estimate is 600. They took them as slaves. 7,400 confirmed dead." A representative from Brazil stood up. "We must respond immediately. This is an act of war." "The Galactic Council will want us to negotiate," someone else said. "Negotiate?" Victoria's voice cut through the room like a knife. "They murdered our children. They destroyed a peaceful colony. There is nothing to negotiate." Richard brought up a tactical display. "I've already begun mobilizing the fleet. We can have 400 warships ready to deploy within 2 weeks." 400? A representative from Japan looked worried. "That's our entire military force." "Yes," Richard said simply. Victoria stood and faced the council. "I am calling for a vote. Do we go to war with the sovereignty?" Every hand in the room went up. There was no debate, no discussion. The vote was unanimous. "Then it's decided," Victoria said. "Admiral Cole, you have full authority to use any means necessary to rescue our people and bring them to justice." After the council meeting, Richard went directly to the military research facility in Colorado. General Brooks met him at the entrance, was in charge of weapons development and had a reputation for pushing boundaries. "I saw the footage," said as they walked through secure corridors. "Every person in this building wants blood." "Can you give it to me?" Richard asked. Smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Follow me." They entered a massive hangar where scientists and engineers worked on projects that officially didn't exist. Led Richard to a platform overlooking rows of missiles. "These are kinetic bombardment weapons," explained. "Tungsten rods launched from orbit at incredible speeds. No explosives needed, just pure physics. One of these can level a city block." "Why haven't we used them before?" "Too destructive, too terrifying. Earth Command decided they crossed a moral line." Looked at Richard. "But after what happened at New Haven, I don't think anyone cares about that line anymore." They moved to another section where a woman in a white coat was working at a computer. Introduced her as Dr. Helen Foster, the chief weapons scientist. "Show him the EMP system," said. Helen pulled up a display showing a satellite design. "This can generate an electromagnetic pulse that will disable all electronic systems across an entire continent. Ships, weapons, communications. Everything goes dark." "How many do we have?" Richard asked. "We can build 20 in a week," Helen replied. "But Admiral, you need to understand what you're asking for. These weapons are meant to end wars, not fight them. If you use these, there's no going back." Richard thought about the children at New Haven. He thought about Sophie trying to save her patients. He thought about Jake running into a burning building. "Build 40, he said, "and whatever else you have that can hurt them." Took Richard to one more room. Inside was Captain Greg Martinez, the commander of Earth's Special Forces. He was a quiet man with cold eyes and a reputation for completing impossible missions. "Captain Martinez will lead the rescue operation," said. Greg saluted. I've been studying the slave facilities in space. I can get your people out. How many soldiers will you need? Richard asked. Give me 200 of my best. That's enough. You'll be going into the heart of their empire. They'll have thousands of guards. Greg smiled. Then it will be a fair fight. While the military prepared, Victoria addressed the human population. Every screen on Earth and in every colony showed her face. She looked tired, but her voice was strong. My fellow humans, she began. By now you have all heard about New Haven. You have seen what they did to our people, to our children. She paused and took a breath. The Galactic Council has asked us to show restraint. They want us to negotiate. They want us to be reasonable. Her eyes hardened. But they showed no restraint when they murdered 7,000 innocent people. They showed no mercy when they took our children as slaves. Victoria leaned closer to the camera. So I will tell the galaxy this. We are done being reasonable. We are done being patient. Humanity is going to war, and we will not stop until every single one of our people is home and every who participated in this massacre has faced justice. The broadcast ended, but her words spread across human space within hours. On Mars, colonists volunteered for the military in such numbers that recruiters couldn't process them all. On Earth, factories that made civilian goods switched to producing weapons. On Europa, miners volunteered their ships as transport vessels. Humanity was mobilizing for total war. Richard stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, the flagship of the human fleet. Around him, officers worked at their stations preparing for departure. Commander Lisa Grant was his tactical officer, and she was reviewing attack plans with focused intensity. All ships report ready, Lisa said. 400 warships, 2,000 fighter craft, 50,000 Marines. This is the largest military force humanity has ever assembled. Is it enough? Richard asked. To fight yes, to rescue the hostages, maybe, to make them regret what they did. Lisa looked at him. Absolutely. A young officer approached. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They're demanding we stand down. Tell them we decline, Richard said. They're threatening sanctions. They can threaten whatever they want. We're going. The officer hesitated. Sir, they're saying if we attack we'll be violating galactic law. They'll declare us an outlaw species. Richard walked to the front of the bridge and looked out at the fleet assembled in orbit. Hundreds of warships waiting for his command. 50,000 soldiers ready to fight. All of humanity united in rage and purpose. Send a message back, he said. Tell the Galactic Council that galactic law failed to protect our children. Tell them that if they want to declare us outlaws for defending our own, then so be it. But nothing is going to stop this fleet from reaching Lisa smiled. That's going to make a lot of aliens very nervous. Good, they should be nervous. For too long, humanity has been patient. We've been diplomatic. We've followed the rules. Richard's voice grew harder. And where did that get us? Our people were massacred while the galaxy did nothing. Well, the galaxy is about to learn what happens when you hurt humans. He turned to face his crew. All ships, this is Admiral Cole. Plot a course for space. Maximum speed. We're going to rescue our people and show them the price of their mistake. The fleet began to move. 400 warships accelerated toward the edge of the solar system. Their engines burned bright against the darkness of space. On the Vengeance's bridge, a communications officer received a final message from President. He read it aloud to the crew. From the President to all fleet personnel, you carry with you the hopes of every human, the believe we are weak. They think we will accept this atrocity, prove them wrong, bring our people home, and show the galaxy that humanity protects its own. Richard sat in the command chair and watched the stars begin to blur as the ships entered faster than light travel. Somewhere ahead in the darkness, they were celebrating their victory. They had no idea what was coming for them. The war had begun. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of space. Richard stood on the bridge of the Vengeance and watched as the sensors detected the first enemy positions. A defensive line of 40 warships waited at the border along with 3 armed space stations. They knew we were coming, Lisa said from her tactical station. Of course they did, Richard replied. They think those ships will scare us off. A commander appeared on the communication screen. He was a different one from the attack on New Haven, but his expression held the same arrogance. Human fleet, you are entering territory without permission. Turn back or be destroyed. Richard didn't sit down. He stood where they could see him clearly. I am Admiral Richard Cole of the United Earth Defense Fleet. You are holding 600 human civilians as slaves. Release them immediately and surrender those responsible for the New Haven massacre. The laughed, you come to our space and make demands. You are either very brave or very stupid. Neither, Richard said. I'm just very angry. You have 1 minute to stand down. We have 40 warships to your 400. But you forget, human, we are warriors. You are farmers and merchants playing at war. Richard looked at Lisa. Show them what farmers can do, fire when ready. The Vengeance's main weapons powered up along with every ship in the fleet. They saw the energy readings, and suddenly their confidence wavered. They started to move into defensive positions, but they were too slow. Lisa's fingers moved across her controls. All ships target lock acquired, firing. The human fleet opened fire simultaneously. Energy weapons and missiles crossed the distance in seconds. The ships tried to raise shields, but human weapons tore through them like paper. 3 stations exploded before they could even return fire. Lieutenant Carlos led a squadron of fighter craft toward the enemy ships. He was one of the best pilots in the fleet, and he flew with practiced precision. His targeting computer locked onto a destroyer, and he fired a full spread of missiles. Direct hit, his co-pilot reported. Their shields are down. Then let's finish it, Carlos said. His fighter dove toward the disabled ship and fired its main cannon. The destroyer broke apart in a flash of light. Around him, dozens of other fighters were doing the same thing. They had numbers, but humans had skill and better weapons. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it ended, all 40 warships were either destroyed or crippled. The space stations were debris fields. Not a single human ship had been lost. Richard looked at the destruction on his screen. Broadcast this engagement to all military channels. I want them to see what happened here. Sir, they're trying to send out a distress call, an officer reported. Let them, I want them to call for help. I want every warship in this sector to come and fight us. Richard's voice was cold. Because we're going to destroy them all. The fleet moved deeper into space. They encountered resistance at 3 more points over the next week. Each time they were wiped out quickly. Human tactics were superior, human weapons were more advanced, and human rage drove them forward without mercy. In the capital city, Supreme Commander watched reports of the battles with growing alarm. He had expected the humans to send a diplomatic protest, maybe a small military response. Not this. Not an entire fleet destroying everything in its path. How are they so powerful? He demanded of his advisors. Our intelligence said humans were weak, that they avoided conflict. They lied, one advisor said quietly, or we underestimated them. What do we do? Stared at the tactical map showing human ships advancing toward their core systems. Call back all military forces, prepare the defenses, and move the human slaves to the maximum security facility. They may be useful as bargaining tools. While the main fleet pushed forward, Greg Martinez and his Special Forces team prepared for their mission. They studied the intelligence reports about the slave facility where the New Haven survivors were being held. The building was on a moon orbiting a gas giant in territory. It was heavily guarded with over 2,000 enemy soldiers. Jenny checked her weapons one more time. She was a corporal in Greg's unit and had volunteered immediately when she heard about the mission. Her sister had lived at New Haven. She was among the dead. You ready for this? Another soldier asked her. I've been ready since I saw the footage, Jenny replied. Greg gathered his team in the briefing room. 200 soldiers in black armor with weapons designed for close combat. They were the best humanity had to offer. Listen up, Greg said. This facility has thick walls and heavy security, but it also has one weakness. They're not expecting us to hit them this deep in their territory. We're going to use that. He brought up a holographic display of the building. We go in fast and hard. Team 1 secures the landing zone. Team 2 moves to the guard quarters and neutralizes their response capability. Team 3 finds our people and gets them to the extraction point. We have 30 minutes from touchdown to wheels up. Any longer and enemy reinforcements will arrive. What about hostile casualties? Someone asked. Greg's expression didn't change. We're not here to take prisoners. Anyone holding a weapon dies. Anyone trying to stop us dies. Our only job is to get our people out. The transport ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the moon and immediately went to low altitude. Sensors detected them, but the Special Forces ships had advanced stealth technology. By the time the guards realized they were under attack, human soldiers were already on the ground. Jenny was in the first wave. She ran down the transport ramp, firing at guards who were scrambling to respond. Her team moved like a machine, each soldier knowing exactly where to be and when. Within 2 minutes, they had secured the outer perimeter. Greg led Team 2 into the main building. They used shaped charges to blow through the reinforced door. Guards inside tried to set up a defensive position, but human soldiers were faster and more accurate. The fight was brutal and short. "Clear," Greg reported, moving to the detention area. Team 3 found the human prisoners in underground cells. Daniel was there along with Sophie, Maya, and 400 others. They were thin and injured, and many could barely walk. When they saw human soldiers, some of them started crying. Sophie grabbed Jenny's arm. "How did you find us?" "We never stopped looking," Jenny replied. "Now we're getting you out of here." The soldiers helped the prisoners up the stairs and toward the extraction point. Some had to be carried. Others supported each other. Daniel looked around at the guards lying dead on the floor. He felt no sympathy for them. They reached the landing zone with 15 minutes to spare. The transports were waiting with engines running. Greg counted heads as people boarded. 412 survivors. They had found everyone except the ones who had died from injuries after capture. "All teams pull back to transports," Greg ordered. "Mission accomplished." As the last soldier boarded, reinforcements arrived. Gunships flew in from the north firing missiles. But the human transports were already lifting off. They returned fire with defensive weapons and destroyed 3 enemy ships before jumping back into faster-than-light travel. On the Vengeance, Richard received the message that the rescue was successful. He allowed himself a moment of relief. They had saved the survivors, but the mission wasn't over. "Sir, we're approaching Lisa reported. Their entire remaining fleet is in orbit, 173 warships." Richard studied the tactical display. They had pulled back all their forces to protect their home planet. It was a good defensive strategy, but it wouldn't be enough. "Deploy the EMP satellites," he ordered. 20 small satellites launched from ships across the human fleet. They moved into position around the planet while the fleet watched with confusion. The satellites didn't look like weapons. They looked like communication devices. "Satellites in position," Lisa said, "awaiting your order." Richard thought about Jake running into the burning school. He thought about Sophie in the medical center. He thought about 7,400 people who had done nothing wrong except try to build a peaceful life. "Activate them." The satellites generated a massive electromagnetic pulse that washed over every electronic system on the planet, and in orbit shut down instantly. Warship engines died. Weapons went offline. Communications ceased. The lights in every city went dark. The fleet was helpless. They drifted in space, unable to move or fight. On the ground, millions of civilians looked up at the sky in fear as they realized what had happened. "Send landing forces," Richard ordered. "Find their leadership and bring them to me." Carlos led fighter squadrons that now acted as escorts for troop transports. They flew down to the capital city unopposed. Citizens ran through the streets in panic as human soldiers landed in the government district. It took Greg's team 48 hours to locate and capture and his command staff. They found them hiding in a bunker under the capital. The commander tried to fight, but without weapons or communications, he was just one more prisoner. When they brought before Richard on the Vengeance, the Still tried to act proud, but Richard could see fear in his eyes. "Do you understand what you've done?" Richard asked quietly. "I followed orders," replied. "We took what was rightfully ours." "You murdered children. You destroyed a peaceful colony. You took our people as slaves." Richard stepped closer. "And you thought there would be no consequences. The Galactic Council will stop you. They will not allow this aggression." Richard laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "The Galactic Council did nothing when you killed our people. Now they can do nothing while we bring you to justice." Human fleet maintained orbit around for 3 days while Richard made preparations. Every ship captain wanted to bombard the planet until there was nothing left, but Richard refused. "We're not them," he told his officers during a meeting. "We don't murder civilians." "They murdered ours," Lisa said. She wasn't arguing, just stating a fact. And that's why we're better than them. Richard pointed at the planet below. There are billions of people down there who had nothing to do with New Haven. Children, families, innocent people. We came here for justice, not revenge. Lisa nodded slowly. So what do we do? We show them that humanity has honor even in war. We protect their civilians while we punish their leaders. And we make sure this never happens again. Richard ordered food and medical supplies delivered to cities. Human soldiers patrolled the streets not as conquerors but as peacekeepers. When citizens saw this, many of them were confused. Their propaganda had told them humans were weak and cruel, but the humans were helping them. President Victoria arrived on the Vengeance 2 weeks after the final battle. She came with representatives from the Galactic Council and a team of lawyers. It was time for the trial. The proceedings were held in the largest hall on the planet. Cameras broadcast everything to every species in the galaxy. Victoria wanted everyone to see what happened when you attacked humanity. And his command staff were brought into the hall in chains. They were given lawyers and allowed to defend themselves. Richard insisted on a fair trial even though many humans wanted quick execution. Daniel took the stand first. He had recovered from his injuries during the journey to the... When he spoke, his voice was strong. I was the administrator of New Haven Colony, he began. I watched Commander demand our surrender. When I tried to negotiate, he laughed at me. He told me our species was weak and didn't deserve to live on valuable worlds. Daniel looked directly at. Then he ordered his forces to attack. They didn't just target military installations. They deliberately destroyed our hospital. They burned our school with children inside. They executed farmers in their fields. This wasn't war. This was murder. Sophie next. She described watching her patients die when the medical center was destroyed. She talked about treating survivors in the slave facility and seeing the abuse they suffered. Her voice shook with emotion, but she kept going. I took an oath to save lives, she said, but they showed no respect for life. They treated us worse than animals. They beat us, starved us, and they laughed about it. Maya about watching her fellow farmers executed. Carlos described the battle footage showing soldiers shooting fleeing civilians. Jenny talked about finding the survivors in cells and the condition they were in. The evidence was overwhelming. Video recordings, testimony from dozens of witnesses. Even some soldiers admitted what had happened. His lawyer tried to argue that he was following orders from higher authority, that the government had authorized the attack, that this was legitimate military action against a colony in disputed territory. Ambassador stood up to respond. She was a human diplomat who specialized in galactic law. Victoria had brought her specifically for this moment. The territory was not disputed, said calmly. New Haven's claim was recognized by the Galactic Council 14 years ago. They had no legal standing to attack. More importantly, even in war there are rules. You don't massacre civilians, you don't destroy hospitals, you don't enslave children. She walked to where sat. The commander claims he was following orders, but there is no order that justifies what happened at New Haven. Every sentient being knows the difference between combat and murder. Commander chose murder. The trial lasted 3 weeks. When it ended, the judges delivered their verdict. All the commanders were found guilty of war crimes and crimes against sentient beings. The sentences ranged from life imprisonment to execution depending on individual involvement. Himself received life imprisonment without possibility of release. He would spend the rest of his days in a cell thinking about what he had done. After the trial, Victoria addressed the galaxy from the capital. Representatives from every major species watched as she spoke. We did not want this war, Victoria began. Humanity has always sought peace. We have followed galactic law. We have been patient with our neighbors, but patience has limits. She looked into the camera with hard eyes. They believed we were weak because we valued life. They thought mercy was the same as cowardice. They learned differently. Victoria gestured to the planet around her. We could have destroyed this world. We could have done to them what they did to New Haven. But we chose differently. We protected their civilians. We gave their leaders a fair trial. We showed that humanity has honor even when dealing with those who have none. Her voice grew harder. But make no mistake, this mercy is not weakness. Any species that attacks our people will face the full strength of humanity. We will defend our own with every weapon we possess, and we will not stop until justice is done. She paused and her expression softened slightly. To those species who live in peace, humanity remains your friend. We will continue to trade and cooperate. But to those who would harm us, remember New Haven. Remember that humanity protects its children. And remember that we never forget. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, species that had dismissed humanity as soft and harmless began to reconsider. The humans had shown they could be more dangerous than any warrior race when their families were threatened. The sovereignty was dissolved. Their territory was divided and placed under galactic oversight. Their military was dismantled. They would spend generations rebuilding and proving they had changed. Richard stood on the bridge of the Vengeance as the fleet prepared to return home. Lisa approached him with a data pad. "Final casualty reports," she said. "We lost 300 soldiers during the campaign, 41 ships damaged but none destroyed, and we rescued 412 civilians from New Haven." "Not enough," Richard said quietly. "No, but it's something." Richard thought about all the people who hadn't made it. Jake and the children in the school, Sophie's patients, the 7,000 others who had died for no reason except arrogance. "Make sure every soldier who died gets full honors," he said, "and make sure everyone remembers why we fought this war." "Already done, sir." The fleet began the journey home. On Earth, preparations were to welcome back the survivors. Daniel had already been asked to help rebuild New Haven. Sophie was organizing a new medical initiative to help species across the galaxy. Maya was planning to return to farming. But they would never forget. None of them would. 2 years after the war ended, a memorial was built at New Haven. The colony had been rebuilt, larger and stronger than before. The memorial stood in the center of the main square. It was a wall of black stone with 7,400 names carved into it. At the top of the memorial were simple words: "They died in peace. We avenged them in war, never again." Daniel stood in front of the memorial on the anniversary of the massacre. Hundreds of people gathered with him. Many were survivors. Others were families of the fallen. Some were soldiers who had fought in the war. Sophie placed flowers at the base of the memorial. "Do you think it was worth it?" she asked Daniel. "All that death and destruction." Daniel looked at the names on the wall. He saw Jake's name. He saw the names of Sophie's patients. He saw children who never got to grow up. "They killed our people and thought there would be no consequences," he said. "We showed them differently. We showed the entire galaxy that humanity will defend its own no matter the cost." He turned to Sophie. "Was it worth it? Ask me again when we've had 50 years of peace, because every species knows what happens when you attack humans." A child ran past them laughing, playing with friends near the memorial. Parents sat on benches watching their kids with smiles. Life had returned to New Haven. The scars remained, but the colony had survived. Richard attended the ceremony via video link from Earth. He was no longer Admiral, having retired after the war, but people still called him the hero of New Haven. "I'm not a hero," he always said. "The heroes are the names on that wall, the people who died protecting their families, the soldiers who gave their lives in battle. I just did my job." But humanity disagreed. They built statues of him in cities across Earth and every colony, not because he was a warrior, but because he had shown that humanity's mercy had limits, that there were lines you couldn't cross without consequences. The Galactic Council had criticized Earth's response at first. They said it was too aggressive, too violent, but within a year they quietly admitted the galaxy was more stable now. Other aggressive species had become cautious. Wars of conquest had stopped. Everyone had learned the lesson. Don't hurt humans, and especially don't hurt human children. Worked with the Council to create new protections for civilian colonies, laws that would prevent another New Haven, enforcement mechanisms that would respond faster to threats. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As the sun set on New Haven, the crowd at the memorial began to disperse. Daniel remained standing there as lights illuminated the names on the wall. Sophie stood beside him. "Do you ever wonder if we've become too hard?" Sophie asked. "If we lost something when we went to war?" "Every day," Daniel admitted. "But then I remember what they did, how they laughed while our people died. And I realized that sometimes being hard is necessary, not because we want to be cruel, but because the galaxy needs to know that humanity will defend itself." He pointed at the children playing nearby. "They get to grow up safe because we showed we're not easy targets. Every human colony is safer now because we proved we'll fight for our own. That's not cruelty, that's responsibility. Sophie nodded slowly. Jake would have agreed with you. Jake died protecting his students. We just did the same thing on a larger scale. They stood in silence for a few more minutes. Then Daniel placed his hand on the memorial wall, feeling the carved names under his fingers. "Rest easy," he said quietly to the names. "The galaxy knows your story now, and it will never forget." As they walked away, the lights on the memorial continued to glow through the night. 7,400 names. 7,400 reasons why humanity had gone to war. 7,400 reminders of what happened when you pushed humans too far. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was patient. Humanity was peaceful. Humanity was merciful. But humanity also protected its own with absolute determination. And anyone who forgot that would face the same fate as the... That was the true legacy of New Haven, not just the tragedy of what was lost, but the message it sent to every species across the stars. Humanity would always choose peace, but if you forced them to choose war, they would fight with everything they had, and they would not stop until justice was done.